Today, we will be looking at the hydrogen strategy, a historic occasion where we see the European Union embracing a new technology in this way, bringing forward a very specific strategy, focusing on a very specific energy vector. In Eurogas, we welcome this growing consensus around the role of gaseous molecules and in the energy transition and in delivering deep decarbonization across all sectors of the economy. We have a very strong lineup of speakers today to discuss this important topic. We're very happy to have Catharina Sikow-Magny, who is the director of the Internal Energy Market Unit in the ENER. We are delighted to have Maria de Graça Carvalho, member of the European Parliament from EPP Group. We are also very glad to have one of our own members, Uniper, represented by Kavita Ahluwalia, VP and Head of Global Positioning at Uniper. And we are so glad to have Federica Sabbati, Secretary General of the Association of the European Heating Industry. I'm sure that we'll have some very interesting views on what the hydrogen strategy means for all of us, and specifically for gas in today's session. A quick message for the participants. We are very keen to have a lot of engagement in today's panel, and I'd be delighted if during the interventions by the experts, you'd be able to use the questions box to write questions that you would like the speakers to answer. I'm your moderator this morning, and I'll do my utmost to get your questions answered by the right people. When we look at what we've been discussing for the past months or even years, here's a strategy looking at how we actually deliver climate neutrality in 2050. And from a Eurogas perspective, it is very interesting to see that we have a strong strategy dedicating a very central role to molecules, with a clean focus on clean gas technologies and what they can deliver as feedstock, as fuel, as energy storage, in applications across industry, transport, power, and building sector. In this order of ideas, I think it makes sense that we move swiftly to our first speaker, Catharina Sikow-Magny. Are you here?
Good morning, everybody. Yes, I'm here. I hope you can hear me.
Yes, we can hear you. Thank you for joining us this morning. I'm sure our participants are as eager as I am to hear more about the Commission's hydrogen strategy. I hope you can share some insight on how the objectives of this strategy will be enacted, given the fairly short timeline and the fairly big level of ambition. Is there anything specific or any specific pathway you'll be particularly looking at as a priority? The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, and good morning, ladies and gentlemen, distinguished panel members. I'm very glad to be here today to share our views with you on hydrogen. I hope the connection is good, because as we are often suffering from IT connection problems, I hope they don't disturb our meeting today. So as we all know, it is by 2050 that we have promised to decarbonize our economy, and which means that we will have a bigger share in electricity than we have today, approximately 1/2 of electricity consumed. But still, we need some form of clean molecules to fully decarbonize our economy, such as in the form of biogas, biomethane, or today's topic, hydrogen. Hydrogen can be used on the one hand as an energy carrier to replace fossil fuels, but it can also be used as feedstock for the production of green fertilizers, green chemicals, or green steel. So hydrogen offers an important pathway to address these difficult to abate sectors. So steel, chemicals, petrochemical industry, heavy duty transport, in the context of which we often speak about carbon leakage, because the alternatives for decarbonization are not that many, or they are not yet sufficiently economical. In addition, renewable hydrogen will also contribute to the energy system integration through integrating ever-growing shares of renewable energy in transport and industry, and by providing them flexibility. We have seen several member states, including Inter alia, France, Germany, Netherlands, Portugal, who have already adopted strong strategies on national hydrogen programs. Austria, Spain, among others, are joining rapidly. We also hear almost on a daily basis industry announcing projects in hydrogen. So we are moving, as Europe, we are moving already quite fast in taking up the potential that hydrogen can offer to our economy and to our decarbonization. So against this background, our hydrogen strategy that was published in July provides our vision how to upscale demand and supply for hydrogen. It is clear that the strategy is giving a long-term focus for renewable hydrogen. That is the aim. At the same time, we do recognize that in the pace in getting renewable hydrogen up to sufficient volumes, there will be a transitional period during which other forms of low carbon hydrogen are needed. So in particular, the benefit is to reduce rapidly CO2 or carbon emissions from the existing hydrogen production, which is, I think, 98% based on gas today. So what our policy aims at providing is an enabling regulatory framework in the broad sense that facilitates the creation of demand and supply for renewable hydrogen and creates a contestable European market. So we see the establishment of a common European-wide certification scheme for renewable and low carbon hydrogen. This is to inform consumers about what products are available. We also see opportunities through the effective integration of hydrogen production from renewable sources in industrial areas and in coastal areas where offshore wind production, for instance, can be brought in as hydrogen. In addition, developing an EU-wide market will ensure the upscaling and opportunities for renewable electricity needed in the production of renewable hydrogen at competitive prices. So market rules for hydrogen should be based on a common terminology or certification criteria and geared towards developing liquid and contestable markets. Scaling up hydrogen production, renewable hydrogen production beyond the existing uses will require also the possibility to transport hydrogen. For large industrial users, we are exploring the option of supporting the building or upgrading of existing pipelines. That will be an economical way of transporting, so repurposing the parts of the very vast and well-integrated gas network that we have today in Europe. In this context, the revision of the regulation on trans-European energy networks will play an important role. So we are looking into the role of hydrogen networks in this context, also in the 10-year development plans. Beyond this enabling energy policy framework, additional actions are needed to support the full value chain approach, and also to provide a possibility for European economy to recover more rapidly and bringing new technologies to the forefront. Renewable hydrogen is an investment opportunity in this context that can bring big numbers of new jobs. We have seen that every billion invested in hydrogen can create 10,000 jobs along the supply chain. So this is very welcome in the current economic situation where we are because of the COVID virus. But to support these investments and the long-term industry leadership, Commission has launched several initiatives. Hydrogen Alliance, to mention the first one, where public authorities, industry, and civil society work together to coordinate investment policies. Furthermore, we have also proposed the creation of a clean hydrogen partnership to support research, development, and demonstration of technologies to bring them to market readiness. And this builds on the success of the fuel cells and hydrogen joint undertaking, and that have been supported under our research program. So the hydrogen strategy sets the Commission's vision, and now we have to make this vision reality. And this is what we are currently reflecting, the concrete follow-up actions, be they legislative or non-legislative. We will be preparing all these in the course of the next 6 to 12 months. So I will stop here and expect to come back in the questions, and I really look forward to my fellow panelists. Thank you.
Thank you very much for now, Ms. Sikow-Magny. Thank you for your interesting opening, and I am sure this will set a very good pace for the discussion. I think this is a good moment to move to MEP Maria da Graça Carvalho, member of the European Parliament from the EPP group and from Portugal. Ms. Carvalho, are you with us?
Yes. Good morning. So should I start? Yes. So good morning to all. First, I would like to thank the organization to have invited me for this panel. I will mainly focus on 3 points. Our position in the Parliament, mainly in ITRE, EPP, the discussions that we had so far on the hydrogen strategy that was presented by the Commission. We have started these discussions quite thoroughly. We have had an EPP hearing on this, talking with several specialists, and we have been working quite hard in the hydrogen strategy. We have, as our shadow rapporteur in ITRE, our colleague from German, Mrs. Niebler, and I will talk a little bit what are the state that we have been discussed mainly in these hearings and with the specialists. Second, I will talk about the Portuguese ambitions and the strategy, and I will then end up with talking a bit about the future, what are my hopes and my worries about the future of hydrogen. So first on the strategy, I would like to recall that, and as we all know very well, the technologies are not new, are well known, and also in the history, the recent history of the European Commission, hydrogen has been already a priority, probably more than once. I remember at least once with President Prodi, and I suppose that was the FP5, the Framework Program 5, that hydrogen was a big priority, a lot of investment on hydrogen. I myself, I'm a researcher. Before my political career, I'm a researcher on mechanical engineer, and I worked and I was supervising several projects on hydrogen, some financed by the European Commission. A bus, actually we had 27 buses run by hydrogen, I think in the beginning of 2000, and the project were perfect and they ran very well. We had in an island of Madeira pilot with green hydrogen or hydrogen from water with the electrolysis, the pilot scale that worked very well. So, and after that, nothing very much happened. So my first ambition from this and my plea to the Commission is that this time is going to be different, that is a sustainable investment, because to invest and to make a priority that after is not continued, that is not sustainable, is in certain way a loss of effort and of the investments. A good example of a sustainable investment in Europe was what happened with gas. When we had this change in the 7th and in the 8th of Europe to change to gas, that was a major investment, very well coordinated between all the member states. We all transformed our energy systems. We all bought. It was a major investment. Part of it paid by the structural funds, like in my own country in Portugal, but really worked, and it's still there today and will continue for several years because it was coordinated, was sustainable, and is something like this that needs to happen to the hydrogen if we are really committed to have hydrogen working in Europe. So we welcome the hydrogen communication from the European, the hydrogen strategy for the EU from the European Commission. We hope, as I say, my first, that is a sustainable priority in the sustainable investments. And we like very much the question of the consistent and stability that we will give to the market and to the member states. We would like to link it to the full energy system integration. For us it is very important, because this is my second comment, we should not go for a complex solution or for the hydrogen solution if we have a simpler and more adequate from the economic point of view solution. So for example, if is a situation where direct electrification from renewable energy, electricity is feasible, you should go for that, and not to go to a more complex or more costly solution. So we should look at the energy system in a holistic and integrated way and choose the simpler, the most adequate, the most cost-effective solution. That is my second comment. Third, we like very much the emphasis of the Commission on the common standards, certification, common terminology. We really need this across Europe. And after, the emphasis on the market. We really need to make sure that the market is there. And Catharina has pointed out where this is applicable. Hydrogen is going to be very important for certain sectors that are difficult to electrify otherwise. Some steel, chemical industry, because it's already used large in the chemical industry. So in some modes of transport, heavy duty trucks, and some modes of transport that cannot use the electricity. So market is a very important point. Infrastructure. We really need to have an infrastructure like the example of the gas. And we have to make sure that if we can use the existing infrastructure, the more modern gas pipelines can be easily probably adapted to the hydrogen. So that is very important, the infrastructure. We also like the international dimension that is mentioned in the strategy, and the fact that we have gas as a bridging solution. We are in EPP convinced that we need to go step by step. Clear, we should invest a lot on research and development and pilot and demonstration to lower the costs of the hydrogen from electrolysis of water, but meanwhile, we should not immediately abandon the hydrogen from reforming of gas. So important for us is also the research and innovation, the emphasis on pilot and demonstration projects. So this is our mainly what we have been discussing, the points that we would like, and our worries and our recommendations for the future of this strategy from the Commission. Related now to the Portuguese Portugal, I'm particularly happy that Portugal has chosen hydrogen and with ambitious. I like it to see in the agenda. I still have some comments. Some of them are the same as I have said for the European strategy, that the Portuguese strategy is fully committed to what is called the green hydrogen, so the hydrogen from the electrolysis of water. I would prefer that we are more cautious and we have a step-by-step approach, that we have a more emphasis on research and development, that we have a strategy combined with Spain. That is very important because this is a huge investment, a big project, so that we are part of the European network and the European infrastructure, and that we coordinate with Spain on the strategy for hydrogen. And I would like to see a more emphasis on the market, because we really need to make sure, especially in Portugal, with a small dimension, a peripheric country, we really need to have a big emphasis on the market. On the reflections for the future, I would like the Commission to be very attentive to the barriers and to make sure that we remove the barriers that make in the past emphasis on hydrogen like we had, like I have mentioned, why it didn't continue. So we need to make sure that this will not happen again. I think that the two main barriers, as I have mentioned, are the infrastructure. We need European-wide infrastructure, and the market. We really need a market that requires the hydrogen, that is a sustainable market, and continue to make sure that we lower the price. To lower the price is to create a market, but is still some technological developments, probably not on fundamental research, more on the integration, pilot scale, and demonstration that you need to finance from the research and development program Horizon Europe, that we make sure that we have already the technology, but that this is affordable. So so barriers are removable. Infrastructure, market, lower the prices through the market, but also more investment in pilot and demonstration. So this is my recommendations for the future, and thank you very much for your invitation.
Thank you very much, Ms. Carvalho. Terribly sorry for having dropped out of the session. My internet is playing games with me, but I'm very glad that Ms. Carvalho managed the situation very well on her own. Thank you very much for this. Indeed, from my own perspective, from a Eurogas perspective, I'm very happy to hear that we are looking widely, both in the Parliament and in the Commission, at the EU-wide certification scheme. This is one of the policy asks that we've been talking about for a very long time. I'm very glad that we're looking at the market dimension and the regulatory dimension of things. Indeed, demand is key. And I think Kavita from Uniper is going to only support my assessment here. So it's time to move on to our next speaker, Kavita, who is the VP and Head of Global Positioning at Uniper. Kavita, thank you for joining us this morning. Can you hear us?
I can indeed. Can you hear me, Felicia?
Yes, perfectly.
Excellent.
Thank you. Together, we are Together, we are moving on to look at the industry's takeaways from this hydrogen strategy. And as such, I think it would be very interesting to hear about your expectations following its announcement. What do companies like yours need to create a hydrogen backbone? Have you already set some objectives? What are you currently working on?
Excellent. Okay, thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, first of all, a big thank you to OPP for organizing this, and of course for giving me the opportunity to take part in such a esteemed panel. I've known Catharina for some time and hold her in very high regard. And indeed, also Ms. Carvalho, when I first came to Brussels, you were in the Barroso cabinet. So you are both definitely role models, I think, for any woman in the energy sector as well, energy field. So yeah, without further ado, basically, I think I'll try and shine some light on our company. First of all, give you a little bit of background on who we are and where we plan on going. And then most importantly, also our hydrogen activities, what we're already doing and what's in the pipeline. And then I'd like to delve into a little bit on the various different strategies put forward on hydrogen at national level, in particular Germany, but maybe also UK or Netherlands if there are any questions there. And of course, we've seen big announcements from France this week as well. And then, of course, focusing in on the EU hydrogen strategy and giving you our pros and cons. So basically, what do we like and what do we think one might need to improve on? And yeah, I think then, we'll go into questions and answers later. And of course, Federica as well will provide us with much knowledge around the heating sector in particular, which I think is just crucial to this debate. So basically Uniper, we're an international company with approximately 11,500 employees. We've got operations in more than 40 countries, so we're very much an international player. And we're headquartered in Germany, in Düsseldorf. Our portfolio comprises of power generation, global energy trading, energy storage, and services, especially for industrial customers, which we now see as a growing field area as well. And we have approximately 34 gigawatts of generation capacity, 7.7 billion cubic meters of gas storage capacity. I think also is a really important part of this discussion. Because the issue of infrastructure was mentioned earlier, and I think it is a really important piece of the puzzle. And 379 terawatt hours of long-term gas contracts with our partners internationally. So basically, coming from our current situation where we very much are in the business of security of supply with a very wide range of technologies in our portfolio, our new strategy that we've set ourselves very much in line with, I think, the Commission's ambitions as well, and the very important issue of basically achieving net zero. We want to do so within our European portfolio, generation portfolio by 2035. And I need not say that with such a heavy base also in the gas business, we really see hydrogen as a very, very important part of this strategy, if not the most important piece. And we're very agnostic when it comes to the type of hydrogen used. It really is about, creating demand and then scaling up ASAP. So, we're very much in favor of both green and blue, all part of it. I think from what we've seen, I think there is a lot to work with. I'll come to that in a moment. First and foremost, maybe just a few points on what we're already doing. So we actually operate large-scale hydrogen facilities already. Indeed, we have the world's first demonstration plant in Feigenhagen in Brandenburg in Germany, storing wind energy and into the national grid through electrolysis. And we've also got a few in the pipeline, basically projects. In Germany, we're looking at building a 35 megawatt electrolyzer in Bad Lauchstädt to integrate green hydrogen in the so-called German chemical triangle. So again, that issue of economies of scale is quite important, and having demand right there as well. And also, we're looking at storing hydrogen in the caverns of our storage site there. So that kind of widens the scope of the project as well and makes it quite interesting. We are also involved in the Humber project in the UK, which aims at decarbonising local industry. in particular refining, and providing hydrogen power for over 1 million local homes in the Humber area. The interesting part here is that it's very much combining blue and green hydrogen, this project. So carbon being captured at refinery level and being stored in depleted gas fields. So we're part of those plans. And in the Netherlands, we're also looking at developing both blue and green hydrogen at our Maasvlakte plant, using local synergies as part of the Port of Rotterdam so-called hydrogen hub that they're planning. And of course, I can go into more detail on any of these projects later if there are any questions around these. And what I think is really, really exciting as well is that over the last couple of months, we've also noted and announced a few partnerships, particularly with OEMs. So we have a partnership with Siemens Energy going forward to develop green hydrogen in particular, both in Germany, but also internationally. And interestingly as well, GE, and I believe that this is the first decarbonization partnership that GE has entered. And we're really focusing in on our existing gas turbine business, especially in the Netherlands and in the UK, and how we will upgrade these and make them hydrogen ready. So, you know, we're teaming up where we need further expertise, and I just think that we see this as a winning combination solution. And actually, we've just announced Wärtsilä as well, so there's a lot happening in this area. So coming basically to the policy side of things, I mean, I think a lot of people will be aware, probably following this debate, that, you know, we mentioned the Portuguese plan earlier. We've got an ambitious plan put forward by the German government with 5 gigawatts of industrial hydrogen by 2030. And when you consider where we are right now, you know, this is all highly, highly ambitious. We've also, I think the emphasis is clearly there on green. Blue is covered, but won't receive much funding or support. I think we would have, if we'd had the choice, we would have done things slightly differently. But nevertheless, it is really, really important that we get going on the technology and on the plan, on the framework. And again, this serves also, I think there's a lot of parallels also that can be drawn with the European strategy. So I think also very, very importantly, exemption is foreseen for power to gas systems fed with renewable electricity from the EEG levy. So we really need some concrete issues also to be tackled in terms of getting things off the ground. I'll set aside the UK for a second, even though there's a lot of really good elements to that plan. And I'll focus in on, I think, also this new idea of the Franco-German partnership and creating an Airbus for H2. I think, you know, the French have now come forward with, they want to invest 7 billion by 2030 for homemade hydrogen. There seems to be less of an international aspect there, because especially in the German plan, there is, you know, there are elements foreseen whereby we could import renewable hydrogen as well from North Africa, in particular Morocco is mentioned there. And I think we should be as open as possible to that as well. This is really also around partnerships and seeing how Europe can also, go beyond its borders and also really drive technology demand and scaling up in other countries as well, where there's growing energy demand in general. And it's all a question of cost. So we have to bring those costs down, as Ms. Carvalho said very correctly. And we should really try and be as pragmatic as possible in this regard. So I think the international aspect is something that should be safeguarded. But yes, in the French case, they very much want to go with the domestic line. What is interesting there is, of course, you know, there's a huge focus on creating low carbon hydrogen from nuclear resources, obviously. And here we are agnostic. I think, you know, it really is going to be key about getting things off the ground ASAP and scaling up. So if that is part of the equation as well, absolutely. But of course, this is something that has yet also to be discussed at the EU level, and something that we're also active on. You know, it feeds into discussions around taxonomy, etc. And I can only urge everyone to really keep an open mind. And then, last but not least, coming to the EU side of things, I think Catharina gave us a wonderful introduction, and so I don't really need to say anything more about the ins and outs on that. I think what I would say is just on the pros and cons. We're very happy on the EU side that all colours are considered, that the European Commission also in its energy sector strategy, integration strategy, that it really sees CCS as having a role to play. And again, that's also reflected, for example, on the UK side, and we just think that that is really, really helpful. Yeah, we also think that it's really good that it has already made it clear that reviews are needed in terms of regulatory framework on RED 2, on the CO2 emission standards regulations, and the introduction of a comprehensive terminology and European-wide criteria for certification of renewable and low carbon hydrogen is key. So that's something that we're looking at internally as well. And I think that, again, Ms. Carvalho pointed out that that is really going to make all the difference as well. So we fully support. Yeah, and then also, again, this realism on the need for imports. I can't emphasize enough how critical it is. What we think still needs to maybe be looked at or tackled is obviously the terminology used. I think anyone involved in the Madrid Forum, my colleagues who are, knows that there are still a lot of gray areas. Sometimes it's not quite easy to understand within the strategy put forward as well, which statements might apply to blue or not. So I think a little bit of clarification there could be helpful in terms of creating certainty going forward. It is a bit rigid on the end user application side. So within the timeframes of those 5 years, the scaling up plan, basically, it very much specifies which sectors are foreseen in terms of funding and at which point in time. And I think it would be much better if this were left to the market and we basically had a much more broad and open view on this. So it's, for us, it's an absolute no-brainer that transport and heating will definitely need to be tackled. And in terms of industrial sectors, chemicals, steel, etc., absolutely need one, do one before the other, ahead of the other. I'd be less, I think we should be more open on. And then, the risk that we run of raising wrong expectations or just having very high expectations on the amounts foreseen. So obviously 40 gigawatts of electrolyzer capacity by 2030 is extremely high. And when you consider that actually in Germany, we only have about 30 megawatts currently. So that's significant. So here, I think, again, it is important to compare annual hydrogen consumption in Europe and be very aware of what's actually needed from each of the sectors. I've got numbers here on whether it's refineries or fertilizer production, methanol, what's actually needed, and then basically try and find the most doable solutions to scale up those needs ASAP and to be able to cover them. Yeah, and I think I would leave it at that, and then basically take questions later. Thank you.
Thank you, Kavita. Thank you for this interesting insight into what large players like Uniper can do to make use hydrogen dream become a reality, and for sharing some insight also on all the different projects that Uniper is involved in. Very interesting assessment also of all the different strategies and what are the different member states doing. I think this is going to contribute very well to the discussion later on. It is time now for our final speaker, Federica Sabbati, the Secretary General of EHI. Federica, can you hear us?
Yes, I can, and hopefully you can hear me too.
Yes, we can. Thank you very much. Federica, one very important aspect of the decarbonization strategy, and equally the hydrogen strategy, that wasn't yet covered in a greater detail, is the heating and building sector. How will the heating sector take up this hydrogen strategy? How can we ensure that consumers have a variety of affordable and easy to implement solutions? Are these choices and technologies readily available?
Yes, the quick answer is yes, we are already on our way. I think, yeah, it's maybe I'll do one step back on the heating industry for everybody. We as association, we represent producers, European manufacturers of all heating technologies. So whether they work with electricity or gas or solar or biomass, so from the condensing boiler technology to the electric heat pumps, solar thermal, biomass, fuel cells, etc. We have basically the whole portfolio. So that gives us also, I think, a good perspective on how the market is today for heating and how it can develop. And obviously the market in Europe is very varied. So Europe is very different for climate, for energy infrastructure, for a type of buildings, for economic background, for a number of consumer preferences. Therefore, in our vision for the decarbonization of buildings and the role of heating, we really see that there's not going to be one single solution that will fit the whole of Europe. I know that would be really nice from a point of view of policy to use that one technology everywhere. Unfortunately, we are convinced that this is not going to be the case, because there's going to be actually, and this is a good thing, there's going to be different technologies that can fit different demands and needs. So we have developed a vision for 2050 with a middle step of 2030. Because we don't get to 2050 if we don't get to 2030 line first. And we really see a role both for electric and electricity-based appliances, as well as for gases, and particularly green gases. So hydrogen is for us certainly not just an option, but a real possibility for contributed to the decarbonization of the heating sector. Is a good complement to electricity, which is of course now very much in the mouths of everybody as the solution for decarbonizing heating. It's we think it's not the only one. When I say that we are ready, it's maybe partially ready with some technologies, but there's a lot of innovation going on at the same time. So maybe interesting to say that, for us, hydrogen is not just something of the future. You can already find, we already have technologies, modern condensing boiler technologies that can work with blends of hydrogen already today. This is possible with blends of up to 20% of hydrogen in the mix, up to 30% for best available technology. And this is already available today. What we're working on, of course, is also higher percentages of hydrogen. We don't think there's going to be blends that go up gradually from 2030 to 40, 50, 60, 70, but we will probably jump directly to the 100% hydrogen. And we are therefore working and testing in the field appliances that work 100% with hydrogen. And I mean, Kavita didn't talk about the UK, but I think for us it's an interesting example, because it's a market that has moved quite, I don't know if it's fast, but certainly in that direction. We're of course now talking almost not about EU anymore, but it's still a big market. And there we have testing in the field of 100% hydrogen appliances. I think there's a couple of projects, particularly in the UK, one with blends and one with 100% hydrogen appliances. And I think there's interesting examples in university campus running on it. So this is something that is real and it's happening already. And we are expand in this field tests in other countries as well, and we will in the next months. So we have more. There's more than just the condensing boiler, which can already work with blends. There's of course there will be hybrids that will work with that. That's micro CHP, micro combined heat and power. Works both producing heat and electricity, up until fuel cells, which of course are the most efficient of those technologies. This to say that technologies for heating that works with hydrogen is not something of the future, but it's already very real. Now, for us, yes, one I should add something from the legislative point of view. There's an ongoing revision of specific legislation on the heating products, on space heaters, and there already the legislator is moving in the direction of considering that kind of innovation. And so I think one call for us to the policymakers would be to keep in mind a consistent framework for the production distribution side, which is more, of course, in the field of work of Eurogas than ours, but also that goes down to the use that can be done of these technologies. It's needed because, of course, investments that are going on in one part of the market have to be consistent with investment going on in somewhere else. So I think it's this is something that is a bit of a call for us to keep that in mind and to provide, therefore, a framework that works for the market as well. And this is why there's, of course, now I get into the discussion. I've seen already on the chat mentioned the allocation of hydrogen is a big discussion. Of course, now there isn't so many, but I understand that this to be a very dynamic market. It is important, I think, that we keep the options open on which technology and which technologies will work for the decarbonization of buildings. In particular, I speak about my sector, and therefore that there is no previous allocation. We only will use this hydrogen in this quantity for this sector or for that sector. Obviously, there is an issue of seeing, where it would work best. But as the market is moving and as technologies are developing, I think it's important to keep an open mind to that and not doing, pre-allocation of future hydrogen quantities to this or to that sector. A final word and on the decarbonization of buildings in general and the role that heating can play. I did talk earlier about the fact that there's going to be, according to us, different technologies that will contribute to it. There's a first step, however, there is a big enabler of this transition, this energy transition to climate neutral buildings. And this is why I say that you don't get to 2050 if you don't get to 2030 first, because this, in terms of time and priority, is now. And I mention it because we have Commission and Parliament present, and the renovation wave is a topic that is now being discussed. The first step that needs to be done in order to enable any, not just hydrogen technology, but any new technologies, heat pumps, hybrid, CHP, anything innovative into the market and efficient and climate neutral, compatible, is the acceleration of the replacement rate of old and inefficient heaters that are in the market. And on average, we know that in Europe's houses, there's 25-year-old heaters working with a very low efficiency because innovation and technology has developed in the meantime, working on fossil fuels mainly, until these are replaced, and the current replacement rate is very low. It's 4% a year for a number of reasons. Until this replacement accelerates, we will not be able to get to the climate goals that we have for 2030 and 2050. So whether it's to enable new fuels, green fuels like hydrogen, or whether it's also to increase the electrification of heating, which needs to happen in order to reach the 2050 goal. first step needs to be the acceleration of this replacement rate of old and inefficient heaters. It is too slow, and there is no other legislation that focuses on this. The only option is to use a renovation wave for this, to target this specific challenge, without which we are just not getting in 2030, neither in 2050 for buildings. So I think this is my comment. It doesn't specifically focus on hydrogen, but it's certainly an enabler for new technologies in the market. And I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Absolutely, absolutely. Thank you very much, Federica. You are absolutely right. We need so much more in buildings. We need so much more to be done in heating. Indeed, we have so much heating that is still running on fuel oil, on coal in very many member states. And this is definitely a first option that has to be also taken into consideration. I would like to bring back all the other panelists now. I think we have about 10 minutes left. I think we can start looking at some of the questions that we got. One of the questions that we have is directed more towards Catharina. It relates to the use of hydrogen in rail and urban areas, as well as rolling out hydrogen in shipping and aviation.
Thanks. Need to put the mic on, right? Yeah, thanks for the question, and very important point raised. And as I mentioned, transport is one of the hard to decarbonize, hard to electrify sectors. So hydrogen certainly can play a role in the areas. And my colleagues from DG Transport, so DG Move as it is called, are working on a strategy on how to then, together with us, how to bring hydrogen to the transport sector, be it in shipping or aviation. Ports will play an important role area, not only for the shipping purposes, but as the possible landing zones, hydrogen that may have then been produced in the sea from offshore wind, for instance. So there is a lot of work ongoing in the policy respect and also research side there. We already see, we may call it a competition between electric vehicles and hydrogen fueled vehicles. So it is something that we need to look into, how to enable the technologies to move fast. Thanks.
Another question also for you, Catharina, so please don't disconnect your microphone too fast. I think to a certain extent this has been already answered, but I think it's still important to ask. Should public funding be used for retrofitting gas infrastructure or existing gas infrastructure to hydrogen operations? I think there some answers were already said to that, but I think it is important to still ask that question.
Yeah, and it's again a very good question. So thanks for raising it. It is actually something that we are currently looking at very carefully, because I mean I'm from the EU funding perspective, but also then from the regulatory framework perspective, because today, as you know, it's the users that through tariffs typically pay for infrastructure, be it in electricity or in gas. So we are looking into this, but as there is also a possibility for public funding, has been for electricity and in certain cases also for gas, the question is on the table, and we need to see what is the best way to ensure. Because in the end, why would we do it? Because there are externalities, there is a public good nature, and there must be an important impact on decarbonization. So these are the type of criteria that any such project would need to fulfill. But what the exact conditions would be, we are currently working on those, very much in the context of the revision of the guidelines for trans-European energy networks. So the question will be put there. You will see the answer in December from our perspective. And we are also looking at the other EU funding sources and the discussions that are currently taking place in the Council and in the Parliament when it comes to funding related to hydrocarbons in general. So that is also an open question. So sorry for not being able to answer in a very clear way, because the work is underway. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you very much. One question, well, coming mainly from the organizers, but I think it would be very interesting for all participants, is this is a festival of big ideas. So what, in your perspective, is one big idea as a policy measure that you would choose to enact if you could? I know there are many, certainly, that you would think about, but if you could choose one big idea policy initiative, what would that be? Kavita, I would start with you.
Great. I'm a fan of big ideas. I just, you know, I like to listen to other people's big ideas mainly. But I suppose, you know, I can't really say that we've got big ideas. I think some of the ideas that we have are quite tangible, to be honest. You know, for us, it's clear we really need to act fast to get going, basically, in terms of, you know, the EU Hydrogen Alliance and the work it's set out and to do, and you know, have these joint projects set up with the help of IPSI funding, etc. So if in terms of regulatory aspects, it's not really big ideas. I suppose a lot of it is just kind of nitty-gritty stuff that would make a huge difference. But sometimes, you know, that's what the EU does really, really well, right? It's the nitty-gritty detailed stuff that actually can have a huge impact. At least I'm saying that from my EU ETS background. So we definitely want to see I think a shift towards renewable and low carbon hydrogen. And I think in order to achieve that, you're probably looking at binding target quotas for 2030. Federica is absolutely correct. You know, it's not just about, if you want to talk 2050 and you really, really need to start being very concrete on 2030, I think, and what we need in the short term. So I think, yeah, the binding target quotas is probably the most critical issue. But like I said, you know, I think the certification platform is going to be really important, you know, for guarantees of origin. And I think, we think that if, you know, there's various different issues around those network charges as well, and who's going to pay for things, to basically ensure that it's just a little bit fairer going forward as well for electrolyzers. So yeah, I think big idea. It's not that big. It's probably a renewable hydrogen quota.
Well, a binding target is a good idea. So
well, you know, if that's sufficient, then great. I've done my job. Fantastic.
Very good. Thank you so much, Federica. Would you like to go next? Sorry for just speaking on you, but I hope that's okay.
Yeah, I have the big idea divided in three smaller ideas. I think for us, I have to say that it's not an old idea, but I keep repeating. But I think now we are almost getting it, and it really focuses on this acceleration of you know, getting innovation in the market. So I think for the heating market, the big idea is to really have the renovation wave focus on renovating heating systems. How do you do that? One, you check all heaters installed in Europe, so to see, you know, which ones are too old and get rid of them faster. Two, you help consumers and users with a change scrappage scheme for all the installations that are there since 15 years, change with new ones. Three, you train enough installers, technicians to handle this wave, because if you accelerate, we will need many more people that actually can do the job in the houses. This, you create in many more jobs. The heating industry in particular is a very European, very local job. market with only maximum of, I think, estimated 10% of imports from outside of Europe. Therefore, you have at the same time a solution for the economic recovery post-COVID and for reaching the climate objectives to 2030 and 2050.
Thank you very much. Short and efficient. Thank you so much. Maria Carvalho, I don't know if you would like to add anything. I think it's interesting to hear big ideas from legislators too. So if you'd like, please.
I would say that is not the novelty, but is what I feel that is very important at this moment. Invest more on research and innovation, special on the part of the pilot and the demonstration, so that we can decrease, still remove some of the technological problems and mainly decrease the price to help them, not only the market, to enhance the market to decrease the price, but also through more affordable technology. And I just want to make a slightly comment to something that Federica has said and is related to what I have said. On the allocation, I don't agree with the pre-allocation that you allocate hydrogen to certain sectors and you say you only can use in this sector. What, in my opinion, should be avoided is that we use hydrogen in sectors or in cases we have better and more affordable solutions. So we have principles, not allocation of sectors, but we have principles when you analyze projects, mainly when you are dealing with public money, because it happened in the past, because it's fashion, because it's a priority. You invest in very expensive technologies, in very large projects, and in the end, after the investment that has public money, but after the maintenance and everything else is going to be paid by the business and the consumers, and we want to avoid that. So principles, not allocation on sectors, but very strong principles for everything on energy and investment of public money, that if you have a better solution, more affordable solution, more sustainable and cleaner, why should you use a more complex and more expensive? That is some principles that I would like to see in all the areas of energy and not only. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Carvalho. Thank you very much for this assessment and for your big idea as well. Catharina, I don't know if you have a big idea too. I guess your hydrogen strategy is your big idea.
Thanks. Exactly. I mean, our big ideas come typically in terms of communications and strategies and such. But maybe just one point. I mean, thanks. I mean, for the contributions and the big ideas from my co-panelists. I mean, very interesting and certainly worthwhile to explore further. And what I would want to just put on the table as sort of the last comment is that, and I'm a fan of working together. So, which means working together at the local.
Catharina,
Only me, huh?
Reality and method. So that's all from my side.
I'm so sorry that we couldn't hear you very well, but perhaps it was just my internet connection. I hope the others could. Thank you all for sharing your views in today's session. Unfortunately, we have a very limited time and it's coming to an end. Huge appreciation to all speakers for accepting our invitation. Indeed, this is a very timely discussion for us to better understand what comes next. In Eurogas, we are hydrogen blind. We're hydrogen color blind. We consider decarbonization as a challenge that requires all readily available technologies to work towards climate neutrality by 2050. Wrapping up, I take away 3 key elements. 1, energy efficiency must go hand in hand with cost effectiveness. The role of gas and heating, for instance, is one such example of where the strategy must recognize the most cost-effective and least resistant path to deliver on the target of climate neutrality by 2050, and before that, by 2030, as Federica mentioned. 2, the promotion of renewable and decarbonized molecules. Again, we are hydrogen colorblind, should not be limited to the so-called hard to decarbonize sectors. And I am so thankful that Ms. Carvalho mentioned that earlier on. The focus must lie on creating supply, indeed, as the other panelists have mentioned too. We in Eurogas believe in a secure and predictable investment climate, and as such, we are calling for targets to deliver the volumes of renewable and decarbonized gas we will need to reach carbon neutrality. And lastly, regulatory and financial incentives must also be hydrogen colorblind, focusing on coordinated infrastructure planning and cooperation between all stakeholders, including internationally. With this, I would also like to thank our participants for holding on to the session, because we indeed have started a tiny bit later, and engaging with the questions box and the speakers. I hope you found this debate interesting and insightful, and I'm wishing you all a very good rest of the day. Goodbye.